Have you ever wondered, when does a narcissist truly see themselves? Not in the moments when they are praised, admired, or adored, but when everything they once used to define who they are begins to fall apart. It happens when they no longer have anyone to blame, no one left to control, and no one to reflect back the perfect image they so carefully constructed. One night, in the stillness of darkness, perhaps after a failure, a broken relationship, or just a long, unguarded look in the mirror, they suddenly realize the person staring back is them, yet no longer resembles the flawless image they once believed was me. What's left is a tired, hollow face, a stranger's reflection, as if everything they built has crumbled right there, within their own eyes. That moment sounds like the shattering of glass inside the mind. Every piece of feedback they once mocked, every truth they once denied, suddenly becomes clear. And they realize maybe the one who was wrong wasn't the world, but themselves. Yet realization doesn't mean acceptance, because what they see isn't strength, but a fractured soul, trembling and lost in its own emptiness. It is the first time in their life the narcissist stops fighting others and begins fighting themselves. And you, the one they once hurt, are the only person who understands the meaning of that moment. Because the very instant they begin to collapse, you begin to stand tall. When they lose their illusions, you rediscover the truth. That false self was built from fragments of illusion, charm, intelligence, power, and the sense of superiority. They lived through the eyes of others, through compliments and admiration. Every word of praise was like a breath, keeping them alive. But what they never admit is this: every light that shines upon their face is borrowed. Inside lies nothing but a hollow darkness, a pit filled with years of suppressed shame and insecurity. And the true self, that fragile core, is just a wounded inner child, terrified of rejection, abandonment, of never being good enough. So they built a fortress of arrogance to hide from that fear. But that fortress is not a home, it is a prison. And the first prisoner is themselves. Throughout their entire life, the narcissist never truly lives, they perform. They play the role of the successful one, the virtuous one, the lovable one. Each role is carefully written to conceal one simple truth: deep down, they have no idea who they really are. And then, when the world begins to drift away, when those who once admired them start to see through the facade, the curtain finally falls. There is no one left to reflect that perfect image back to them. That is when two selves begin to collide. The mask fights to maintain confidence, while the true core trembles, terrified, desperately trying to hide its inner emptiness. This inner conflict sends them into panic. They no longer know what to believe: the admired image others see, or the weak, frightened self screaming within. And what emerges from that collision is not remorse, but profound terror. They are terrified by how small they truly are, terrified to realize that everything they once took pride in, love, power, control, was built upon illusion. And most terrifying of all is when the mirror no longer reflects who they wish to be, but who they truly are. When the mask can no longer shield the fragile core inside, the narcissist enters their deepest crisis. Reality itself becomes the enemy. For ordinary people, reality is where growth begins. But for them, it feels like betrayal, because reality neither flatters nor obeys, and it exposes every flaw they tried to hide. Every piece of criticism, every minor failure cuts like a knife through their fragile pride. To escape the truth, they twist reality, rewrite the story, and switch roles, turning the hurt one into the betrayer and themselves into the victim. If criticized, they claim others are jealous. If abandoned, they insist they were used. Their words sound confident, but in truth, they are merely armor forged from fear. Deep inside, they know the illusion is cracking. They keep performing not to convince others anymore, but to deceive themselves that everything is fine. Yet the more they run, the closer reality follows. And when they can no longer bear it, they choose total denial, to live inside a fabricated story where they are always right, always wronged, always the center. But eventually, When reality can no longer be bent, when their lies can no longer hide the truth, the narcissist begins to fracture from within. The proud exterior collapses, revealing the most primitive fear of all, the fear of their own self. When admiration fades, they are left exposed and empty. What floods in is not guilt, but unbearable shame, the emotion they've spent their entire life escaping. They begin destroying every mirror that once reflected them. Lovers become traitors, friends turn into enemies, even success enrages them because it reminds them of the lost glow they can no longer feel. Everything that once fed their ego now becomes a threat, and they choose to destroy it all just to avoid feeling powerless. In their mind, if they cannot control something, it must be destroyed. Yet this collapse makes no sound. It arrives in utter silence. They withdraw, avoid the gaze of others, and slowly fade away. Each time they look in the mirror, they no longer see the victor, but a weary, hollow stranger, the final proof of a painful truth. Behind every illusion, there was never a real self to begin with. When silence can no longer protect them, the narcissist begins to explode. Their rage erupts as a survival reflex, fierce, chaotic, and desperate. For them, anger is the final shield, a way to scream, "I still have power." But behind that armor lies a soul falling apart, frightened, fragile, and hollow. And when rage no longer saves them, they switch roles again, becoming the victim. They say pitiful things, "No one understands me," or "I only wanted to love and be loved." It sounds remorseful, but it's merely emotional manipulation. In their world, being pitied is better than being forgotten. When that sympathy fades, they project again. Every fault becomes someone else's. If they betray, you are labeled the liar. If they are lonely, the world is accused of turning its back. The toxic cycle, anger, pity, blame, denial, repeats endlessly until they find a new mirror to reflect their old illusion. And you, the one who left that stage, have found the light. But they are still performing before the darkness within themselves. When anger and victimhood no longer work, the narcissist returns to their familiar drug, a new mirror. Another person, naive and unaware of who they truly are. And so, the cycle of illusion begins again. At first, they appear radiant, charming, affectionate, perfectly reenacting the old honeymoon phase. But with each repetition, the light dims. Every cycle drains more of their energy, more of their belief. They grow tired, empty, and less convincing than ever before. When the new admirer begins to see the cracks, the performance collapses again. They lament, "No one understands me. I'm always betrayed." Yet, they fail to see, the only betrayer has always been themselves. As the years pass, and age and reputation fade, the fear of being forgotten becomes their greatest nightmare. Jealousy replaces passion. Bitterness replaces charm. They become addicted to attention, as if it were oxygen. And deep down, they know they are pretending, but they cannot stop, because if the mask falls, they will no longer be anyone at all. When the final mask begins to crack, the narcissist is forced to face what they've run from all their life: shame. Not guilt, but toxic shame, the kind that doesn't say, "I did something wrong," but whispers, "I am the mistake." Ordinary people can admit fault, make amends, and grow. But for the narcissist, admitting a mistake would mean total collapse of their inner world. So they choose to attack, manipulate, and deny anything to avoid feeling small. Inside them remains a child who was never truly loved, who once tried desperately to be seen, only to be met with coldness and abandonment. As they grew, that child put on the armor of power, intellect, and charm, yet the fear of rejection still burns behind that icy stare. When there's no one left to admire them, those memories resurface. They are no longer the angry adult, but the terrified child trapped in a grown body. And power, in the hands of a soul drowning in shame, becomes a storm that destroys everything around it. When the shame overflows, the narcissist does what they've always done best: they redirect the pain. Instead of feeling it, they throw it outward. projection becomes their only survival mechanism. In psychology, projection means attributing to others what one cannot accept in themselves. But for the narcissist, it's more than a defense, it's a lifeline. They cannot bear feelings of weakness, guilt, or inferiority, so whenever those emotions rise, they immediately hurl them onto others. Asterisk, if they feel small, they call you weak. Asterisk, if they fear abandonment, they accuse you of being ungrateful. Asterisk, if they dread being forgotten, they insist you are indifferent. And so, you begin to feel guilty even though you've done nothing wrong. You are simply carrying the emotions they cannot bear. The more they project, the further they drift from reality. Their world becomes a distorted mirror where everyone else is wrong and they are the victim. But the tragedy is this: when all blame is cast away, they also lose the chance to be real, to heal, and to find peace. When projection becomes a way of life, the narcissist doesn't just distort personal relationships, they fracture their entire world. What began as a defense mechanism slowly spreads into every area of life: work, family, friendships, even their own self-perception. That's when the silent collapse begins. In the workplace, they cannot tolerate feedback or criticism because feedback is a mirror reflecting truth. Instead of listening, they instantly retaliate, blaming colleagues, slandering superiors, or manipulating situations to remain seen as the most competent. When they feel their control slipping, they withdraw abruptly, leaving behind strained relationships and unfinished projects. Yet they always keep the story, "I left because they weren't on my level." In the family, the tragedy deepens. They do not see loved ones as individuals, but as mirrors reflecting themselves. A devoted spouse or obedient child makes them feel admired and validated. But the moment someone shows independence, expresses a different opinion, or simply stops idolizing them, they feel betrayed. Then, their so-called love turns into a weapon: coldness, silence, or venomous words of blame. In friendships, they choose disappearance. No goodbyes, no explanations. They simply replace their social circle, erasing those who know too much and surrounding themselves with fresh, impressionable faces, easier to manipulate. But the problem is, every person they erase takes a piece of their reality with them. Gradually, their life becomes a patchwork of broken stories held together by lies and denial. Every place they've been is like a cracked mirror, their image still visible, but no longer whole. And when no mirror is left intact to reflect their illusion, they begin to feel lost within the very world. They've created a world where no one is real anymore, not even themselves. When there is no one left to reflect them, the narcissist faces the thing they fear most: existential emptiness. No more gazes to shine upon them, no more praise to cling to, until they suddenly realize, if there is no illusion, if I am no longer admired, then who am I? That is the moment of identity collapse. A part of them knows that everything they've built was a lie, yet another part cannot survive without it. Their mind splits in two, half longing to awaken, half yearning to return to the dream. This tug of war slowly drags them into an existential crisis. Some sink into depression, isolating themselves, living in quiet panic. Others respond with extremity, reinventing themselves into a new persona, stronger, more seductive, more perfect, as if a brighter mask could forever keep the darkness at bay. But each time they rebirth, they repeat the same cycle, constructing illusion, controlling, collapsing, and rebuilding. An endless loop where they keep running from themselves, never escaping the fear of truly living. From this point on, everything becomes an internal war without end. Inside the narcissist live two opposing forces: illusion and reality. One side is the glittering mask they have crafted, the other is the weak, ashamed, fearful self they've buried. When illusion begins to tremble, reality starts to speak. And in those rare moments, they glimpse the truth that they have driven everyone away, that no one truly loves them, that admiration only existed when they were performing. But instead of awakening, that realization becomes torture. Each ray of truth feels like a blade cutting into the illusion they fight to protect. The narcissist starts swinging between extremes: arrogance and despair, pride and emptiness. They may appear confident, only to collapse moments later in silence. Every emotional outburst is a desperate attempt to keep the mask from shattering. But the harder they fight, the clearer it becomes what they're protecting was never real. And when the final mask falls, the battle between illusion and reality reaches its end, but not for both sides at once. For the narcissist, it marks the beginning of collapse. For you, it marks the beginning of awakening. Because the deepest difference between you and them lies in your capacity to reflect and grow. You can look directly at yourself, see your mistakes, your pain, yet never lose your kindness. You know how to hurt, but also how to learn. And that is what allows you to heal and evolve. But the narcissist is different. Each time they face pain, they throw it outward. Each time they face responsibility, they find someone else to blame. They never truly grow, they merely change form to keep escaping themselves. When you understand that, you no longer feel the need to save them. You realize that you were never born to be their mirror, but to look honestly into your own reflection with truth and courage. Healing doesn't mean forgetting, it means retelling the old story with honesty. Remember this: your empathy is not a weakness, it is your strength. Your depth does not make you more fragile, it allows you to see life more clearly. And while they continue to wander, lost in self-hatred, you rise through self-acceptance. When you stop seeking validation through their eyes, you reclaim the right to define yourself. And when you can smile at who you truly are, even if imperfect, you have achieved something a narcissist never can: peace within your own truth.